Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen. Today we're going to make steak fajitas and homemade guacamole for dinner tonight. So I'm going to first start out by prepping some of my vegetables and then that. So we have an onion. This is just a sweet yellow onion. Some bell peppers. And then I have tomatoes. And then the avocados for the guac. So I'm going to first start out with the onion. The way I do my onions is I first cut off both ends of the onion. And then I make a slice all the way through like this. And I peel off that top skin because this top skin is not good for eating. And then I'm going to cut it in half. And then I'm going to thinly slice half of it into strips. These are going to be what we're going to use in our fajitas. You see how they break apart and they're thin? And then what I have left, I'm going to thinly slice part of it to add to the fajitas, and then I'm going to use the rest for my guacamole. So I have this part thinly sliced, and then I'm going to slice these as well thinly, but then I'm going to mince them up and I'm going to use them in my guacamole. You don't need too many onions for your guacamole because it kind of packs a little bit of a kick. So just enough to give a little bit of flavor, but not overbearing. And you're gonna wanna mince them very small so that it's not super chunky and overbearing. So I've got my little bit of onions right here that I'm gonna use for the guacamole. So I'm gonna pick these up. I'm gonna put this in the bowl that I have for my guacamole. And now I'm gonna slice up my peppers. So I have 3 peppers. I typically like to use the red, the yellow, and the orange over the green because I think they have a sweeter taste. And it's not as, I wouldn't say bitter or something like that, but I just think the red, the yellow, and the orange taste better than the green. So I'm gonna cut them in half, and then I'm just gonna kind of pull out the seeds a little bit. These are not spicy peppers. Bell peppers are not spicy. These are long bell peppers. They're long ones, so they're just a little bit sweeter, but they have them at Costco this week, so I'm excited. Now I'm just gonna slice these down in strips. When I'm slicing, I'm pushing my top of my knife into the board and then going down. That way I can slice pretty quickly. And then when I get towards the end, I'll just move my finger out of the way so I don't get cut. And then I'm gonna do the same thing here. I'm gonna just pull off a little bit of this part because that's not as tasty. And I'm just gonna cut, and I'm slowly feeding it through, just like this. In the beginning, when you first start cooking, you're gonna cut a lot slower. As you get more used to it and more comfortable using knives, you'll become a lot more proficient and faster at it, and it will take you a lot less time to prep for your meals. So I'm gonna cut off the top of this, and then I'm gonna just take my knife in there and just kind of go around so I can remove the seedy core. There we go. And then I'm gonna just slice down the middle, just like this, and then there'll be just a little bit of strips. I mean, you can keep these on, they just don't taste as good as the, I guess, the rind or the outside of the pepper. And then I'm gonna slice these up as well. Just pushing in as I go and down. You'll want to make sure your knife is sharp to do this. If you have a dull knife, it will snag on the pepper skin as you try to cut it. So just sharpen up your knife and then it should be much easier to cut. So I'm going to chop up the rest of my...
You got a question? They want to know what you're cooking?
I'm cooking fajitas. So I'm going to cook steak, fajitas, and homemade guacamole. So I have 2 New York strips that I'm going to slice up and cook. I'm gonna do them saute. Sometimes I do them on the grill and then slice them after I cook them. But since it's really cold and snowy out here, I'm just gonna cook them, saute them on high heat. So I'm gonna scrape out the inside of my yellow, just like that. And then I'm gonna just hold it, cut it down through the middle. And this makes nice little, if you've ever had fajitas at a restaurant, nice little strips. And I'm gonna just cut this one up real quick. And then when I'm done cutting all these peppers, I'm gonna take a couple pieces and I'm gonna mince them up and add them to our guacamole. Because I love to have a little crunch in the guacamole. Sometimes I just make a straight up avocado mash. But when we were in Mexico last week at a resort we were staying at, had the best guacamole I've ever had. I don't know if it was because their avocados were fresh and not ripened after the fact here, but all of my kids, everyone, it was so good. We all commented how it was the best guacamole ever, and they made it right in front of us at the table. So I'm using all the same ingredients as theirs, so I'm hoping it turns out similar, but I have a feeling their fresh avocados were the key to it because it was so like smooth and fluffy, but yet good and fun. So I've taken these bits of my peppers here, and I've just diced them up into small pieces, just like that. So I already had the strips from there, and I've just diced them up, and then I'm gonna add them over here for my guacamole. And then last, before I end there, I'm just going to cut up a little bit of a tomato to add into my guacamole. So I'm just gonna do some slices down like this. And then I'm gonna dice these up as well. And I'll use this for some to go in my guacamole and then some for us to add to the top of our fajitas, because I like to have a little coolness on my fajitas, so I'll add sour cream, some guacamole, and fresh tomatoes. There we go. So I'm gonna dice these up too, just like I did the onions and the peppers. And now I'm gonna put a handful of this over in here for the guacamole. Okay. Before I switch to cutting my meat, I'm just gonna cut open my avocados and put them here. A trick if you wanna know if your avocado is ripe, you can peel off the stem and it should be green inside, if you can get there. But you can see that it's like a little bit greener inside. So when I cut it open, you should see it's nice and green and ripe. And it will also be soft to touch. So we have a good avocado. If you wait for your avocados too long, they will turn brown really quickly. Like you can have a ripe avocado and the next day it can be terrible. What I typically do most of the time when you buy your avocados from the store here in the States, your avocados are going to be hard and underripe. I just leave them out in my fruit bowl for a day or two until they're just soft touch, and then I'll throw them in my refrigerator until they're ready to use. When you put it in the refrigerator, it stops the ripening process. So I'm going, since I have these cut out, I'm just gonna pop the avocados out. I just kind of do this instead of using a spoon. They pop out real easy. You just stick your thing and you start to peel back the outer peel of it. When your avocados are ripe, they'll also come off easy like this. If they're not ripe, the peel won't detach as easily. And that's also how restaurants can have those like perfectly sliced avocados, because they just peel it off like this and then they slice it. And now I'm gonna get the seeds out of these. And this I'm making, this is a lot of avocados and fajitas, is because I am a mother of 5. So I have to feed a little army here. And you know, and I have some teenage boys, and they love to eat. So I make enough, and it seems like a lot of food. This is more than what you would eat for a family of 4 or just 2. This is to feed my family of 7. So I've got my 4 avocados in here. And now my hands, as you can see, are covered. So I'm just gonna rinse them real quick. And get back to cooking. Okay, so before we're gonna go to cut this, I'm gonna put some oil in my pans to start warming it up. So this one's gonna be for my vegetables, and this one's going to be for my steak. My kids don't always like them mixed together, so I cook my onions and my peppers separate from my steak, just for the kids' sake. And I'm gonna turn these on to an 8, which is high on here is 10, so 8 is just below it. And then I'm gonna get a little bowl for some of my chopped up tomatoes right here to put it in there because I'm about to throw my vegetables on. Okay. So I'll put these to the side. I have my vegetables and I'm gonna wait, long burner. And I'm gonna put them right here and then I'm gonna start with my steak. And once my oil is hot, I'm gonna throw my onions and peppers in. But you don't throw them in until your oil is hot, otherwise they'll be soggy and they won't get that nice saute crisp to it. So I'm gonna just push it to the side and I'm gonna work on my steak. So here I have 2 New York strips and I am going to first cut them down the middle like this so that I can cut them into thinner strips because I don't want my chunks of meat too thick because I just wanna be able to saute them quickly and on high heat. So just like this. And then I'm gonna just trim off a little bit of this fat. New York strip typically has a strip of fat on the side, which is great for grilling. But today I'm not grilling, so I'm just gonna cut that fat off. And then I'm gonna cut the fat off of this piece as well. And let's see, I've got the fat here. I'm gonna turn down my meat oil just a little bit because I won't be ready to throw those in just quite yet. And here's a little bit of cartilage as well. You're gonna wanna cut that off because that will be very chewy if you cook it up and you saute it. So any of the tough pieces or the harder pieces, we're gonna want it cut off. So I'm gonna cut off some of this fat right here. The fat, if you don't know, is the white part of the steak. So, again, I like to try to teach things for everybody, so if you're a novice cooker, you don't feel like you're lost in the sauce. I think cooking is a valuable lesson for everybody to learn, and I feel like it's a dying art. I feel like not as many people can cook basic meals as they used to, and they're just kind of scared by the fact of cooking if they think it's daunting, when really it's easy. You just have to try. Now my oil over here looks like it's nice and hot. So I'm going to pick up my vegetables and I'm gonna throw them in. And you can already hear them having a nice sizzle. So, and I throw them there and then I'm gonna grab a pair of tongs. These are my probably most used kitchen utensil outside of my knife. And I'm just going to give them a quick little turn, kind of poke at the onions to help them break up. So this is just my onions and peppers mixed. I'm just gonna put it in there and I'm gonna cook them over high heat because I really want them to like blacken up a little bit, just like when you're getting them on a hot skillet at a restaurant. Okay, so now that they're kind of mixed up, I'm gonna let them sear without kind of tossing them too much. And I'm gonna work on slicing up my meat over here. So I'm gonna slice it up into thin strips, just like you would at a Mexican restaurant. This will allow your meat to cook really fast. So it will allow it to cook up without getting super tough. If your strips are much thicker, then you're gonna get a chewier meat instead of tender. So I'm gonna cut these up while I'm gonna get this one a little thin. So again, if you're just joining us, I'm using New York strip, but you could also use like a sirloin or I would avoid a flank steak or a strip, like a, what is it, a flank steak, or I'm trying to I'm lost. Stop it. Because they get really tough if you saute up in the pan. Those are really only good for cooking on the grill. You don't ever want to cook a flank steak or skirt steak. There we go, skirt steak in a pan because it'll just be very tough. That's meant for grilling. So if you're gonna do it with a different cut other than a thing, I would stick with, a sirloin is always really good. A ribeye, ribeye is more fatty, so it could have little fat pockets in it, where the New York strip you can easily cut off the fatty part. There we go. And I can see I'm almost done cutting through this. But again, you want to take nice long strips because you're gonna want them to cook fast and quickly. And this one looks like a big chunk of fat from over there. This is sauteing very well. I'm gonna take my tongs and just give it a little quick stir. And you can see how it's already gotten some of that nice blackening on them. That's exactly what I want. Because it's real crisp up, it'll have a nice flavor to it, but it won't taste burnt. Lots of stragglers. Just, there we go. Sear that up, and I'm almost done over here. I'm gonna start turning my oil back up to high again so that it will be ready to toss these in once I mix a little bit of seasoning on them. And then as this is cooking, we'll make our guac, and then we'll pretty much be ready to eat. I love to have family meals that are made from scratch so that I can cook quickly because we are a very busy family. I have lots of kids in sports and activities. Okay, I have my meat cut up here into thin strips, so I'm going to take a little bit of Worcestershire sauce. The acidity is going to help keep your meat juicy and tender. So I'm just going to give it a little drizzle to kind of coat it all. And then I have some Chipotle seasoning. And I'm going to sprinkle a little bit over this. I'm not going to do too much because some of my kids can't handle that much spice. That was a big chunk. And then some garlic salt. Perfect. All of that. I think my peppers and onions, awesome. Before I turn them off the heat, I'm just gonna do a quick sprinkle of garlic salt. I like to add my seasoning at the very end, otherwise it burns to my skillet. So I'm gonna just toss them in, and now I'm gonna turn off my heat, and I'm just gonna slide it off over here so it stops cooking. But my onions and peppers for my fajitas are done. So now I have my meat strips over here. I'm just gonna toss them up in the seasoning mixture, which was garlic salt, a chipotle seasoning, and Worcestershire. I'm not sure how you say it.
And is there a reason that you did the vegetables first and then you're letting those sit and you're going to do the meat last?
Yes, so most people can cook them all together, but my kids don't like the vegetables in there with the meat, so I cook them separate. I find that I don't want my meat to be overcooked, so I cook it last so that when it's ready to serve, it's perfect because it can get tough fast. So I always wait to do that so it's the right consistency because nobody likes tough steak. So I'm going to sprinkle it around, and I'm going to just move my cutting board out of the way and wash my hands real quick. And while my meat is cooking, I have my avocados and then my diced up peppers and onions and tomatoes that we did earlier. And now I gotta cut open a lime, and we're gonna squeeze it on there, and then I'm gonna mash it up. But let me get a new knife since I use this on my meat. Let me get a new knife and a cutting board. And then I can mash that up. I use a full lime in my guacamole. When you're buying your limes, you're gonna want one that has a thinner skin and is squishy. If they're firm to touch, or you can feel they have a thick skin, they're not gonna be a very good lime. And I'm just gonna squeeze the lime juice in. So far that's a half a lime. And I really squeezed it to try to get as much out. And now I'm going to squeeze the other half. You can also cut them up into fourths and squeeze them. If you are having trouble squeezing a big half of a lime, sometimes they can be a little bit tough. And I'm not afraid to really get my fingers up in there to really get out all the juice. And I find you have to use fresh lime juice. You can't use the real lime, whatever, it just doesn't taste the same. So I've got my fresh lime juice in there. I'm wetting my hands real quick. Before we mash it up, I'm gonna do our steak a quick little turn. Do you see how they have a nice little brown char on there? And again, we have a lot of meat because this is to feed a family of 7. Okay. I'm going to turn my heat up high because I want it to really sear quickly. And now I'm going to add, I forgot my pepper over here. I'm going to add a pinch of pepper. You don't need very much, just a pinch. And my secret ingredient, I don't use regular salt, I use garlic salt. Garlic salt makes all the difference in my guacamole. And you're gonna want more than you think. So I'm gonna have a good, healthy sprinkling of it. And now I'm just gonna use my fork to mash it up. Just like this, you just poke it through. If your avocados are hard to mash with a fork, it means they weren't ripe yet. So always make sure that they're soft when you cut them open, so give them a good squeeze. And if you can squeeze them well, then they're ready. So I'm just gonna mash it just like this. Up. And then I'm gonna start stirring in some of the tomatoes underneath and the peppers. Now that I have it a mash, I'm gonna stir them up to the top and mash up. The lime, fresh lime is key. It also will help prevent your guacamole from browning. Also, if you have too much guacamole, make sure you put it in a container and then push saran wrap down or press and seal to completely cover the surface. Otherwise, it will turn brown because it will oxidize, just like banana or apples oxidize when they're left out in the air. They'll just turn brown. So now I have my guacamole. And that looks like it is finished. Let me taste it, see if I need to add any more salt. Oh, perfect. This one's perfect. And then I'm going to flip my fajitas, do the meat real quick. And I'm just going to kind of cook them until I don't really see the pink anymore. It gets okay if it's a little bit pink, but I don't want to see the deep red.
You had a comment that you make it all look so easy. So that's years of practice.
Years of practice, and it gets easier with time. Okay, so now I have my fajitas cooked. This is where I want to stop. I don't want to overcook them, otherwise they will be really tough. So I have them, the strips. You can still see there's a little bit of pink on some, and that's perfect. This isn't chicken, this is steak. So it's fine if there's a little bit of pink. Now, all we have to do to plate up a fajita, I got big burrito ones today. Sometimes I use the smaller ones, but when we went to the store right before the big snowstorm, everything was sold out, even tortillas. So I've got my big tortilla. You can use corn if you want. If you like that, I'm a flour tortilla girl. And I'm gonna put it down. And then I like it with onion and pepper, so I'm going to spread my onions and peppers first. Then I'm going to take the strips and line them up as well. And this is a big fajita, so one will feed my kids just fine. And then I like a little bit of fresh tomatoes and a big healthy dollop of guacamole, and I have chips for our guacamole as well. So look at that. And then a little bit of shredded cheddar cheese. And to me, it's not complete without some sour cream. So let me open up our sour cream and give it a nice dollop. Whoop. And it's ready to fold up. And now you have some delicious, yummy fajitas. Perfect. And you can't forget your chips with the guacamole. Well, thanks for joining us. If you like, please subscribe. I love having you here. Thanks again.